Well, welcome back, everyone. No surprises for guessing where we are. We are in with the lovely Mr. Ferry back in Keith's room to do another episode of the Canary Room. Now, I think what's happening, Keith, is we're getting a little bit of a bad reputation for ourselves because I put a little post on Facebook last night to say, you know, we were here, and lots of people were questioning whether we were having a drink or two.
Well, we had a cup of tea and a coffee, didn't we?
We did, yeah, we did. We had a cup of tea and coffee, and then this man here tried to steal my beer on more than one occasion. Isn't that right, Mr. Ferry?
Well, we didn't want you to get drunk on beer, did we?
No, so you...
I thought I'd,
you helped me out.
Share it.
He's such a kind gentleman, such a kind gentleman. Well, listen, we've got another fantastic episode in store for you today. As is always the case when we come to Keith's, there is a number of very lovely young Norwich already out on the sticks to have a look at. We have caught on camera, so stay tuned for this. Something that you do not see very often. Okay, and if you remember last time we were here, we were talking about Keith's Canary bully pairing. Not going to say any more than that. You've got to keep watching. The show, as always, when we're in the company of Keith, will be packed full of hints and tips. So you know what to do, everyone. Grab yourself a cuppa, sit back, and enjoy the show. Oh, wonderful, wonderful.
We just had a laugh,
yeah.
a good laugh.
What you didn't see there, everyone, is I asked Keith a question and he carried on talking and answering it, and the camera wasn't running, and I let him go for about 2 minutes, and I said, we're not filming this, you know. So
I got a sore throat, I know, with all the talking I was doing.
Yeah, that's the whiskey.
I think we recorded.
That's the whiskey last night. So early in the season, but a really good sort of, I mean, we can see some of them here in the flight, both Fifes and young Norwich. So it looks like, mate, you've had a good start.
Yes, and let me repeat myself, which you didn't hear earlier. But what I was saying, prior to me having the lights, going in with the lights, is that my birds always went down in April. And I used to have my first lot of chicks about the 6th of May every year. But since having the lights, and this is the third season, the birds come in condition a lot earlier. And I think I'm about 3 weeks earlier than what I used to be. Hence, the first round went well, the fertility was good and the hatching was good. But you always have your ups and downs with Norwich, so although I hatched quite a few, I've lost one or two. Which is unfortunate, you know, with bird keeping, with livestock. They always say if you've got livestock, you've got dead stock. So it's just a matter of trying to keep that percentage of dead stock down. I'm more than happy with what I've got. The second round's been hatching this last week, so I'm happy.
Yeah.
Happy what's going on.
Yeah, good stuff. And I think, you know, when you look at them, they're pecking away, aren't they, at their egg food. They've got the soak seed. We've seen your soak seed, you know, approach before. We've got a couple of shots here of it through the different stages of sort of, you know, with the bleach, if you like, in the first instance, and then draining it and serving it, and that's looking good. And then the egg food as well with your grated broccoli in, and you've got sweet corn in there again this year, or you got sweet. Is that the first time with sweet corn, or?
No, I've been using sweet corn for 2 or 3 years now. The birds like it just as much as peas.
Yeah.
There is, I've found this year, a bit of a setback with sweet corn, with the Norwich, because they love eating it, but it always leaves a husk. And when that dries out, they love to lie in the nest. And I've found that when they lay the egg, their first egg or any egg, when they drop the egg, it's always damp. And these husks can stick to the egg. So if you are using sweet corn, just be careful. Just watch in the nest. If they're lying in the nest with these sweet corn husks, tend to clean it out the night before they're going to lay. Because what you don't want is these husks stuck to the eggshell.
Yeah.
And it's a hell of a bloody job to get it off.
Yeah.
And of course, if you've got one of these husks stuck on there, the eggs won't roll or turn like They should do.
Yeah.
So that's the experience I've found this year.
Yeah, and I've got a couple of shots here of one of the Norwich picking up lots of nesting material and making a nest. The Norwich aren't renowned for the quality of their nest making, though, are they, mate?
No, I wouldn't trust them to build a house, I tell you, consider to fall down. But they usually build, and I finish up shaping it myself, so there's a nice cup in there, and they can. The last thing you want is them build right up, let them lay the eggs, and then fly off, and the egg shoots out.
Yeah.
They're not the best of nest builders,
no,
by a long shot.
But they are absolutely beautiful birds, and I think one of the important things, and we talked about this. This is our 9th episode, I think, with Keith Ferry, our 9th show together. So I think we've got to get to double figures, mate. So we'll have to do another one at some stage.
Well, that sounds like another bottle of whiskey I'm going to buy then.
It does.
I think that's why he comes down here. No, we enjoy each other's company, and if I can pass on certain things to people, then it's well worth the while.
Yeah, one of the things, and I think when we see this, in every time we come into Keith's room and we see the sort of quality of birds that he's got here. But one of the important things with the Norwich, and you've been very candid about this over the years we've been doing this episode, is you guarantee the first round. So you've got feeders in the room that you're breeding, and you would guarantee that first round in Norwich, but you also don't want to breed the instincts, the rearing instincts out of the Norwich. And I've got a shot here, ladies and gentlemen, of a hen, which is rearing some sort of grey-wing cross Norwich young, and it's done a marvellous job on them, hasn't it? Well,
I mean, amongst all the birds in my bird room, she's been the best feeding hen compared to, with the feeders and the 5. She's been the best. She reared these crossbred grey-wing Norwich all on her own. 4 of them. She hatched 4, and she'd done a perfect job from day one. And I didn't introduce the cockbird until I dropped the nest on the floor at 14 days, and he's helping her now. But she's a marvellous mother. And over the years, with the Norwich breeders, the Norwich section, we're breeding this instinct ahead of them for rearing, and that's my aim now, to try to get all my Norwich to rear. But like Matt said, they are so difficult to breed, and you need to guarantee that first round, because your first round are your show birds, and they are your breeding birds for the following year.
Yeah.
Let them try to rear the second round, even if you put, like I did on that pair, some feeder eggs under. But I mean, we experienced, when Matt come yesterday afternoon, of another Norwich hen hatching her own out, and she started feeding them straight away, didn't she?
Yeah.
And I think you got that on shot.
I think we've got a little shot of that we can probably see now, and that is, it's a lovely sight, isn't it? And one of the things we were talking about last night, which I think was fascinating, and it's something that you said you do. Norwich hens in a pair will sit on the nest and call to be fed, and sort of sit there and eat, and then not do a great deal else. No. And so you've got a couple of hens, and that's one that's on its own to start with, and then you'll reintroduce a cock when you're dropping them onto the floor.
That's right. You find that, like I said, they're quite a lethargic bird, a lazy bird, and if you've got the cock in there and she hatches them, she'll call to be fed, and she won't even stand up to look at the youngsters. They're bloody lazy.
Sounds a bit like me at the breakfast table.
Well, I nearly said that, but not on camera. But I find that splitting the cock away from the hen, and she's got to get off that nest. She's got to go and get the egg food herself. And when she comes back, she sees them youngsters. She'll clean the nest out with the eggshells. So it brings her into that cycle of doing everything she's supposed to.
Yeah.
And not all hens will do it. But I'm trying to get this line going, so they will.
Yeah, and one of the things, again, we talked about last night, which, and again, it's one of those things, the nuggets that sort of Keith just talks about, and I'm like, oh yeah. And we talked about the when you're looking at hens, you know, we all get a little bit nervous, and I certainly do, about are they being properly fed. And one of the things you talked about was that redness in the mouth, and that's for you very much an indicator that it's being fed properly.
Yes, I mean from day one and right through, if they're feeding properly, the gate should be red. If it's dull, they're not feeding them properly. And you need to do something then. Either top them up or put them somewhere else, else you're going to lose them. But if they're feeding right, you'll know by the gape of the birds.
Yeah. Wonderful, wonderful. Well, we're going to have a little look at some nest management. And again, you know, I mean, some of the things we're going to talk about here are the recycling of cardboard. So stay tuned to that, because that's genius. And also, Mr. Ferry has been adapting his front-hanging nest pans, which again is genius. So stay tuned, everyone. So we've changed position in the room. We're in the different side. We're in the west wing of the room. The feeding of the young and that sort of general nest management, and we can see there's 4 young Norwich in a nest here in cage 66, and you've dropped them down on the floor. You've used your yoghurt pot. And we've got a little shot of this now. You were saying earlier on with your yoghurt pot, well, I'll leave it to you, mate. You were slightly concerned that it was a little bit wobbly.
Well, what we find with these little 5 nest pans is that they're sitting in the yoghurt pots, which I used to keep for the Norwich pans. The Norwich pans sat on there a treat, but these little ones, they tend to slip and tip. So last year it was difficult. I would put them down, putting the youngsters at 14 days, and if they slipped and weren't careful, the youngsters would jump out, and then you can't get them back in. But I found now that if you put some sawdust in the pot, then you just drop it onto the sawdust. There's no rocking on it whatsoever. It just goes first time down. So you're not disturbing them youngsters, and they won't jump.
Honestly, everyone, whenever Keith says these things, I'm like, yeah, that makes loads of sense. Why didn't I think of that? But what else makes loads of sense, mate, is these little cardboard things that you've got so because you put the nests, don't you, in the corner of the cage?
Yeah. Well, when I drop them, I mean, obviously they're in the middle of the cage, hanging. So when I pull the slide out and the youngsters are voiding over the nest, they're not messing the sides of the cages up. But when I drop them, I'll push them over to the far corner. But so they don't mess the cage sides up with their droppings, I put cardboard there. So they talk about recycling cardboard, and all this Amazon cardboard what comes, of course we recycle it, we put it in recycling bins, but I'm also recycling it up here, so I'm cutting it up in strips. And the other thing is that when I cut it up to the right size, and it goes in there, I square it up, turn it 90, angles at 90 degrees, that's one round. And then the second round, I just clean the voids off, and then I turn it over so it does it twice. Then I can throw it away. Yeah. So I'm recycling all the while. And
honestly, when you see this, and it keeps the cage nice and clean. There's no mess on the side of the cage and everything else. And I'm just looking there, going, yeah, that's another really good idea. I don't do that. I end up washing the back of the cage down and all of those things. So that's again another super tip, everyone. And another one is Epsom salts. Tell us about them, Keith.
Well, we talked about the Norwich rearing, etc. And I looked back at what we used to do 30, 40, even 50 years ago, the old-fashioned way, to get the birds off the nest and keep them clean in the crop. We always used to give them a pinch of Epsom salts. We used to give them a pinch in the water the day before they're due to hatch, and then increase it every day until they started voiding over the nest. And then we used to knock it on the head and not use it after 7 or 8 days, once you see them voiding over the nest. Because what it was doing, the Epsom salts kept the the parents cleaning the crop, because when they eat the void, etc.
Yeah.
And we never had any problems. But nowadays, with using all these additives and one thing and another, like Gold and that, it can be too rich in the water. Right? It's very good to get the birds in condition, but if you continue it like it says, you can give it through the breeding season every day, you'll find that they get a bit loose. So I've gone back to Epsom salts. It'll keep the birds coming off the nest, and it keeps them clean.
Yeah.
And at one time I struggled to find Epsom salts. But I've found a source now, and I'm using it. Back to the old-fashioned days, which can be the best.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think we spend a lot of time, don't we, trying to perfect things, and then we realise that actually they weren't not perfect in the first place. And we had really good success back then. So we should probably adopt some of those hobbies. And one of the things again that sort of impresses me, and I've got a shot of it here, there's a couple of Norwich away, and you've got within the dividers, you've got the holes at the bottom, and then there's the hens, the feeder hens in this instance, can still feed through the gap. So the birds are picking up themselves, but you're not taking any chances, because we know the Norwich take time, don't we? Fife, you've got to make sure they're picking up, but normally around, I never like to say days, because you've got to make sure they're feeding, but 22 days, 23 days, you can generally see that the Fifes are picking up and they're okay. The Norwich are slightly different, aren't they, mate?
No, yeah, I mean, with Norwich, you get at least 30 days.
Yeah.
You got to be, 100% certain they're picking up. But, I mean, another reason of dropping the nest is, and the things you can get with all birds, is feather plucking. So if you keep the birds in a position from day one upon the wires, generally when the hen wants to go to nest, that's where she wants to go to nest. Or she'll start feather plucking them. You put them down on the floor at 14 days and then give them another nest, plenty of nesting materials. They tend to, leave the youngsters alone. So that's another reason for going down.
Yeah.
And like you say, to stop this feather plucking, once they're out that nest on the floor, you can take that pan out and put the slide with the holes in, because they'll still feed them without the worry of feather plucking. Because the last thing you want in Norwich is having the tails out, because they grow another quarter of an inch longer. You don't want them feather plucking on the breasts, because when you come to molt, you get different colours. So if you do have a young Norwich, which is feather plucked, you need to sprinkle a bit of colour food, so when they start, even when the parents are feeding them, put the careful in there, but so when they are feathering up, that colour is coming out.
Yeah.
Because they may not molt those feathers a second time.
No, sure. And when it comes to, again, that nest management, there's a shot here, and this is one of the things with the new cages you've got here. They don't fit the bigger pans through. So you've done a little bit of Keith Ferry carpentry here, everybody. So you've got this is just genius, because it's literally, isn't it? It's a piece of wood and a screw.
Yeah. Well, I found that. I love these. The system, the nest pans on these wide fronts, and you can keep an eye on the youngsters without having to look in the back of the cage when it's the old way. So I do like the system. But with, because Dave Rand's a very good friend of mine. He made the cages, this large batch of cages, and he also supplied the hooks and the pans. But I found the Norwich pans just won't go through the doors. So I've had to revert back to my old pans, which will go through. But of course they don't take the wire circle and the hook. So I've had to adapt it with this little timber with a screw on it and push it down like that, and it works.
Yeah. And I guess the one final thing around the whole nest and the nest management, and we talked about this, you you want to make sure that you maximise the number of young that you get, and you talk really, your ideal is to have a nest of 3 Norwich in there, and that means sometimes you've got to move birds around, and you've got a relatively novel way of making sure you don't lose track of those birds, haven't you, mate?
Well, until you ring them.
Yeah.
I mean, once you ring them, you know exactly where they come from. But, I mean, if there's a problem from day one and you have to put the chick was newly hatched, with that down on their back, you can mark them up with a coloured felt tip and put them into another nest. And that colour felt will not go away. You'll even see that in the fluff when the bird's fully feathered. So that, if you've got a nest of 2 and you put another one in there with the felt tip mark on there, when you come to ring them, you know where it's
Which
from.
one it is, honestly. A new use for highlighter pens, everyone. Who knew? One of the things, Keith, that I always notice when I'm here, place is always tip-top condition, but there are always baths on the cages, aren't they? And even in the middle of the breeding season, you're rotating those baths right the way through. And you were saying earlier on that, the day before a hen's due to hatch, you'll make sure the bath's on.
Yeah, because of the humidity and help to hatching. I've said before, this room tends to be a dry room, hence me investing in a humidifier. Which Matt has took a bit of a video of it.
Yeah.
But also to help is put the baths on the day before they're due to hatch, and 9 times out of 10 the hen will go into the bath, so wetter feathers and that go back on the nest. Then that moisture goes into the nest and onto the eggs, which helps the hatching. So the humidity wants to be between 50 and 60. For good hatching. And we've been lucky this first round into the second round, the humidity has been there. But the bird room is now starting to dry out. So any more hatching, which I've got some this week, that humidifier is on.
Yeah.
And the bars are on. And also later on, if you come into June and it gets really hot, I've known to throw water on the floor as well.
Yeah.
You've got to keep that humidity to get that hatching.
And speaking of eggs, there's a unique way here of we enjoyed a little breakfast before, didn't we, mate? And we had some eggs, and then the eggshells, they didn't get recycled or anything. Well, they did get recycled actually. They sat on the side.
Well, definitely recycled. I mean, when my wife does cooking with the eggs, etc., we save the shells until she's got a tray full. And then if she's doing any baking, they go into the oven as well to dry them out. Not for long, just to dry the shells out. And then she puts it in the blender and brings them down to a fine eggshell dust. And I've got a big box of it, and in the egg food each day I'll put a spoonful of that in. It all helps with the calcium. I mean, I do give them Calcivet or anything like that, because I think they need plenty of calcium, and I think it's very beneficial for the birds, the calcium.
So again, there we go, everyone. Eggshells, keeping the eggshells, and as we look here, we've got different setup with the perches this year, mate.
Yes, I've decided to have less perches in the cages. So with the Norwich over the other side in the east wing, as Matt would say, you'll notice in some of the double breeders only a couple of perches. I'm finding they're mating on the floor with better success. They do a lot of mating on the floor or the side of the nest pan. But whether that's helped the fertility this year, but the fertility has been good on the first round, excellent in fact.
Yeah.
And whether, the different things I've tested and tried by not having so many perches possibly have helped.
Possibly, and of course the one other thing that helps with the fertility is the trimming, and we've seen you do the trimming in there, but it's not just the adult birds you trim. So when you're putting the young...
No, when I wean the youngsters, And sometimes you can get, they're eating the egg food, and they can get a bit loose at times, and they can get clogged up. And this is where you lose a bird. Everybody, Norwich people know this, that, Christ, come back from work or whatever, and there's a bird all clogged up. And if you don't release that, you'll lose it. So when I wean them from the cages into the flight, I get the scissors out and cut all the way around the vent. And full well, when they're molting, the new feather will come anyway.
Yeah.
So it just helps. It's just one of those things that helps me. And I always think it, saves them getting clogged up.
Yeah, wonderful. Last time we were here, mate, you introduced us to a very nice bullfinch hen. And a very, very nice, I thought it was a purebred Norwich cock, but it's not. It's sort of...
Well, it's two-thirds Norwich.
Two-thirds Norwich, yeah. So, which was a very, very nice bird. And she went down to nest.
Yeah.
She laid. She sat.
But unfortunately, the eggs were clear. She'd done everything what you're supposed to do. I mean, they got on well. They was with each other in a double breeder all winter, so they were used to one another. And I put them into a little flight, which you'll video, and they seem to get on there for well. And I put 3 nesting sites up, and I was surprised to see her starting getting interested in one of the sites, and she started building a nest, which she was always the boss of the Canary, but I never saw them fighting. They seemed to get on well. So he used to leave her alone, and she told him to bugger off when she had the first choice of feeding. But everything, they seemed compatible. And she made this nest, and she laid 5 lovely eggs. So I decided to leave them alone, let them get on. And I made a note when she started sitting, and kept my fingers crossed, but each day went on when it come up to 13, 14 days, and they didn't actually. Eventually I had a look, and they were clear. So beginning of last week, I decided to take the eggs away and split them up. I'll put the cock in the next flight to her. As what they always say, absent makes the heart grow fonder. Well, I decided we'll pull the slide while Matt was here, and behold, you'll see on the video what happened. So let's just keep our fingers crossed, but we'll see. They are a difficult bird to breed, and you're very lucky to get one. But they are beautiful hybrid if you do breed one. Yeah,
so we can see here they mated within not a long time of coming back together, and then we saw them again, didn't we? We saw them. There was another tread after that. So, and one of the things we talked about last night was, it was relatively early in the morning when we filmed that. One of the things we talked about last night was the sort of the cock canary birds being more virile in the morning.
I went to a lecture in America once with Andrea, the company is a surname now, but she's veterinary, works at San Diego Zoo, and I've known her for a little while, and I went to listen to one of her specials. She does a lot of artificial insemination, etc., but she did come up with this interesting fact that she knows that any bird, it'd be a canary or whatever, that when the fertility is the highest is first thing in the morning. They're rested through the night. The sperm is made through the night. They're very virile from the early morning, and as the day goes through, it gets less and less. So you need to pair your birds up. If say for instance you've got a cock bird with 2 hens, you need to bring that cock bird down in the morning to the second hen and watch them mate. You've got a bigger chance of getting fertile. If you come home from work and decide to put them and they mate in the evening, the percentage of sperm, the fertility or vigour rather, and is a lot less. Because she also said to me they excrete some of the sperm through the day.
Yeah.
So it's high sperm count is from first thing in the morning, and it gradually goes down
throughout the day. Well, let's hope that was early in the morning. It was. So let's hope that there's something there, mate. Let's hope. Well, but listen, not content with breeding the canary bull, you've been breeding song thrushes as well, mate.
Well, yes, we've had a nice nest of song thrushes outside in the pyracantha, and we were very lucky for 5 eggs, 5 hatched, 5 reared, and 5 fledged. Lovely to see. Yeah. And I haven't seen a song thrush around here for a long time, but to encourage those and get them established would be fantastic. So a beautiful bird.
So we always, when we're here, we always focus on the Norwich. You're renowned for your Norwich, but you've also got a lovely developing stud which has done well for you and continues to, of Fifes. And looking in the flights, there's a few ones in there. There's a few nice ones in there. So good season with the Fifes as well so far.
Well, I think so. I'm not taking so many this year. In fact, next year it's going to be even less because as I get older, I find it hard with the amount of pairs I keep. But regarding the 5, I'm happy with what we're breeding, and the stud is establishing each year.
Yeah.
To the point, in fact, I have to thank Matt because he let me have a lovely variegated green, and we've seen 3 youngsters already produced from one of my variegated copperas, which was a bird that come forth at the Midlands 5 show, and the 3 youngsters, Matt's quite happy with what he's seeing there. Yeah. So the stud's getting on, and I shall, where I've got these treble breeders, and I've got 1 cock to 2 hens, next year I shall just have single pairs, I think. So the bird room isn't so crowded, and I've got more time to establish a good stud. I'm more than pleased.
Good stuff. And we were talking just off camera before about sort of numbers and volume, and this morning you were sort of saying, with the Norwich, you've got, I think you did an article after you won the national, saying if you're able to, you want to try and get sort of 40 as a minimum to be able to pick from, because you'll have some good birds in there, and that'll help you move forward. And that's that's not an easy feat to do, to get that sort of volume of Norwich. But the other thing that you've said is that it's important not to get greedy. If you've had a good couple of rounds, don't be tempted to take the 3rd.
No, we all know it's difficult to purchase Norwich, good Norwich, etc. And there's always that feeling you've got to breed as many as you can just to help. Well, we all like to help other fanciers to keep the Norwich section going, but you don't want to be too greedy, because as the year gets on, coming into June, and even like today, it's nice and warm. It's quite warm up in this bird room, but it's going to get even warmer, and it's not fair to the birds. If you're happy with your first round and the second round's gone on fairly well, be satisfied with what you bred. Don't take it out on the birds. It's not a factory, it's not a machine trying to push out as many birds as you can. Hence me saying earlier on, I'm trying to get these birds to feed. So if I'm happy with the second round and I've got sufficient for me to look after, then that'll be it. Yeah. We don't want to put them through a lot of stress through hot weather.
No.
Just be satisfied with what you got.
Yeah, and I think particularly when you think about the Norwich, because it's the flight. The flight of birds this year will be the show team as well. So you don't want to ruin them, do you? The breeding season, you want to have them available to show. And I think before we wrap up, mate, when we look in the flights with the Norwich, we know there's a plan to develop some whites, and we can see there's I think there's one in the nest and there's one already away.
Yeah, and we've had 5 hatch out yesterday, and hopefully there'll be some whites in there, and I've got 2 nests of youngsters from some whites, so that I can't tell if they're white yet, but fingers crossed we'll breed a few whites this year.
Lovely, 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 lovely. Yeah. Well, listen, it's another epic. It's another epic with the wonderful Mr. Ferry. I think episode 9, so there will be an episode 10, everybody. We've made that decision now, haven't we? We've made that decision. We'll come back later in the year and see you.
Well, yeah, let's hope we have a decent molt. I hope everybody else has a good molt, so we get a few birds on the show bench. And that's what all this hobby's about, is the enjoyment of breeding the birds, the experience of breeding birds, molting your birds out to perfection, and put them to exhibit them in the best possible way you can. We've got to keep these shows going. We know we've got problems within the country with the government and the death row and all that, but we've got to show that we're still within the hobby and encourage young people into the hobby.
Yeah, we'll keep doing that. As always, wise words from the great man himself. If you've enjoyed the show, you know what to do, everyone. Smash a like, hit the subscribe button if you haven't subscribed to the channel, because you'll get lots of content and advice on whiskey drinking as well. Who could ask for more than that? Listen, until next time, everyone, thanks for watching. Take care.
Well, I wish everybody a successful breeding season and a successful molt, and I look forward to seeing you all on the show bench.
Lovely stuff.